In the summer of 1953, this vehicle was rolled out onto the lake bed at Edwards Air Force Base. This is the North American X-10. The vehicle was intended to test out modern, advanced aerodynamics and, at that time, advanced electronics and inertial guidance systems for the planned North American Navaho intercontinental cruise missile. It was the most sophisticated drone of the 1950s and the true grandfather of all modern drones. The atomic bomb was a development of the Second World War, as was the guided missile. Immediately following the war, development began on new missile systems, such as MX-771, which would become the Martin Matadors deployed in Asia and Germany. Also developed MX-775, the Northrop Snark, one of the first intercontinental missiles of the United States. North American proposed a rather mundane vehicle, MX-770, a 500-mile range missile based on the German Wasserfall. Wasserfall was the German surface-air missile concept. Heritage aside, development of the Navaho began in 1947 under the guidance of Dr. William Belay at the new North American Aircraft Aerophysics Laboratory, Los Angeles, California. As part of the development of the Navaho, work began on the North American Test Instrumentation Vehicle, or NATIVE, at Alamogordo, New Mexico. In 1949, construction of the first components of the planned MX-770 vehicle began at North American Aircraft. Unfortunately, in 1949, the Soviet Union also detonated their first atomic bomb, and the Cold War was now fully on. In 1950, the Korean War would begin. All the missile programs were rushed, and Navaho went from a 500-mile range vehicle to a 5,000-mile range vehicle. It was also now to carry the hydrogen bomb. From a 500-mile range, medium-range ballistic missile system to a 5,000-mile range intercontinental cruise missile, capable of destroying any city in the world in a flash. To develop this vehicle, construction then began on the RTV-A-5, which we know as the X-10. The purpose? To test out the avionics, electronics, guidance, and structure for the new Navajo cruise missile concept. Development of the X-10 began at the Aerophysics Laboratory in 1950. Here, wind tunnel tests, both subsonic and supersonic, were performed on the new X-10 design. A full-size mock-up was also produced. 66 feet long, 14 feet tall, wingspan 28 feet. It was actually contemporarily the size of a P-51 Mustang, but it weighed 42,300 pounds. Had a range of 800 miles and a maximum speed over Mach 2. It also had the radical feature of full-flying forward canards, something that had not been on an American aircraft since the Wright brothers' Flyer. Construction of the first X-10s began at the new Downey facility in the winter of 1951. The first frame was ready in September of 1952. What prevented the aircraft from being delivered to Edwards, however, was the slow delivery of the J-40 engines the Air Force had donated. They would not be ready until the summer of 1953. As the X-10s awaited their engines, testing began of the flight control system, The ET-33 aircraft had been equipped with a complete radio control system for the X-10. To simulate the X-10 until the X-10s arrived, a QF-80 drone was used. The F-86 dogfighter, or F-86D, equipped with special dive brakes, tested out the X-10's autopilot system. All these aircraft would later be used as chase aircraft for the X-10 during the X-10 test program. The all-important thing that was tested, though, was the ground control radar. A very extensive radar system was necessary to track and control an X-10 at supersonic speeds. All the inputs from the radar system went directly to the plotting board. This gave the controller all the information he needed to control an X-10 at supersonic speed from the ground. In May of 1953, the first X-10 arrived at Edwards Air Force Base and underwent electronic testing in the hangar. In July, it was ready for engine run-up tests out on the tarmac. Finally, in August of 1953, it was rolled out on the lake bed for both additional engine run-up tests and the start of ground testing. The X-10 was rather modern for an aircraft of 1950s vintage. Active laminar flow control for the engine inlets, swept wing, twin-tailed, full-flying canard. The engine system had large clamshell door systems, which were the precursors of the axisymmetric engine exhaust systems we use today on our modern aircraft. In September 1953, taxi testing started. Taxi tests tested out the auto chock system, the parabrake system, and the radio control system just for ground control. On September 24th, during the second test, a simulated takeoff and landing was done, with the nose wheel being raised and then quickly lowered. Thus, by the end of September, the X-10 was ready for its first flight.